Hello, I'm Dr. Hannah O'Regan from the Department of Classics and Archaeology at the University of Nottingham, and I'm going to present to you today a short talk about bears in Britain. So bears, when we think about them, really come in two sorts of types. We have the teddy bear, which everyone's very familiar with, and many of us will have had one as a child, and then we've got the bear as the epitome of the wilderness, as we see on this biology textbook front cover. We've got polar bears wandering around in an Arctic landscape. And we've got these two very different views of bears. Some tamed, some definitely wild. And that's really at the heart of the relationship that we have with these animals right the way through time. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. Okay, so if we look at this map, we can see that we've got bears throughout Britain. We've got them from northern Scotland right the way down to Dartmoor. So they're very widely spread, and they're from time periods from the Mesolithic through to the post-medieval period. So they're well spread in time as well. But then if you look at the number of sites that are present, there's actually only 57. And 57 sites across 10,000 years is really not very many sites, or not very many bears. And note that we've got 25 sites that haven't got dates yet. I've got a project with a colleague at Oxford, and we're currently radiocarbon dating bears from some of those sites, so hopefully we'll have an update for that for next year's Archaeology Day. Okay, so we've got 57 sites. Now if we look at the number of bones that are present at each of those sites, this graph shows the number of bones, or the number of specimens at the bottom, versus the number of sites, and you can see that over half of the sites that we have only one bear bone. So although bears, they're found at a number of sites, they're actually very, very rare even at those sites. And you can see that there's just a few sites that have 10 or more bones. And those are either Anglo-Saxon cremations, where we've got multiple claws that probably came off skins that were burned and were then placed in the urns, or from London, which I'll talk about shortly. Okay, so those are the localities. Now, if we look at across time from the Mesolithic period through to the post-medieval, and here I've divided them into anthropogenic or archaeological sites and non-archaeological sites. And so you can see very quickly that we've actually only got 6 dated non-archaeological sites for Britain. And they're 4 are Mesolithic, we've got 1 in the Bronze Age and 1 in the early medieval period. The Bronze Age one is from northern Scotland. The early medieval one I'll talk about again in a moment. And you can see that overall, nearly every bear that we have data on at the moment are from archaeological sites. And those archaeological sites could be ditches, they could be castles, they could be pits, they could be from abbeys, you know, any type of archaeological site, villas. That's where we're finding these bones, but mainly from archaeological and very rarely from wild. Moving to a local site and wanting to look at bears that were found in the wild, I had the opportunity to look at a couple of bear teeth from Reynard's Cave over in Dovedale. Now, you might remember Reynard's Cave because this little hoard was found there a few years ago and is now on display in Buxton Museum, but also found were various bits of bear, including a couple of teeth. Now this is the molar, and I sent off an incisor for radiocarbon dating, and it had been found not that far from human remains and also not that far from the hoard in the cave, and so I wondered whether this might be a later bear bone, but in fact it turned out to be from the late glacial period, so it wasn't a recent bear, it was a very, very old bear. So that was no help in finding more recent bears. Now, the most recent bear that we have in Britain at the moment is a bone from Kinsey Cave, which is in the Yorkshire Dales, and that, as it says, dates between 420 and 610 AD. But I find this very strange. Kinsey also has the latest lynx remains in Britain, and I do wonder if the Romans might have been introducing things to hunt, as we know that they're shipping animals around the empire for a long time. We just don't know at the moment. I would like to find that bone and do some DNA on it and see whether it matches other bears from Britain which have already been studied. So, trying to work out whether we've got live bears or dead bears at different times in the past, and this diagram sort of summarises it. And we've got, my suggestion is, in the Mesolithic and probably in the Neolithic, we've got live bears wandering around. In the Bronze Age, we've got no evidence for bears at all, except one skin that was found in a peat bog in Dartmoor in a human cremation in a peat bog. In the Iron Age, we've just got claws from cremations, which suggest people are being cremated with skins. In the Roman period, we've got all body parts represented, which suggests we've got live animals. The early medieval period, we've got a couple of fragments of teeth, but also we've got foot bones, which again suggest claws and skins perhaps being traded. Medieval period, post-medieval period, we've got evidence for live bears. And so my suggestion is that we might actually be getting bears being imported by the Romans into Britain in the Roman period, rather than bears from Caledonia being exported to Rome, which is of course the story that we get told by Martial. I could be wrong, but that's my current thoughts. Okay, looking at those medieval and post-medieval bears then, let's have a quick think about those. Well, why are they here? What are they for? Well, bears are widely used in entertainment, both for bear dancing, but also, as this quotation says, William Fitzstephen records that in London on feast days, huge bears do battle with hounds let loose upon them. And that is a description of bear baiting. And here in this example from the Smithfield Decretals, you can see a picture of a bear looking very shy but being attacked by two dogs. And this was the sport: a bear tied to a stake, dogs let loose upon it, and then bets would be placed upon the outcome. To us, it's an absolutely horrific idea, but it was an incredibly popular sport at the time. Now, this is something I'm going to be working on a lot for the next couple of years. We've got a grant to study bear baiting around Britain, as well as in London, which is where the majority of baiting took place. And it took place in arenas on the south bank of the Thames in Southwark. And you can see we've got the bear baiting arena shown on this map. And we've also, if you look closely, got the dogs visible in their kennels, waiting for their opportunity to probably be killed by the bears at some point during the fighting. And we'll be studying the bears, we're studying the dogs, we're studying the archival records to try and work out how this sport worked and various other aspects of it and how it fitted in with the playhouses and various other things. So here's an example. Again, actually, this is a local example. These are made in Nottingham. It's a bear baiting jar. You can see he's holding something in its paws, and it's not a bear cub, it is actually a dog, and this is a bear squishing a dog. So it's showing us what happens during that bear baiting. And you can see there's a hole in the bear's muzzle here, and there's a hook on its collar, and there would have been a chain that would have attached between those two items. And there also may have been not just brown bears in Britain, and it's brown bears I've talked about all the way up until now, but there are records of polar bears being brought into London, particularly for James I. And there's this example from a reference to the visit of the Spanish ambassador, where a white bear was turned into the Thames. Now, a white bear that's really good at swimming and can kill things, it could well have been a polar bear. Moving on from the bear baiting, the bear dancing, using bears in entertainments, unfortunately bears were also used as products, and here we have a bear's grease pot lid, and it does what it says. Bear's grease, the fat from the bear was rendered down and used to strengthen and promote the growth of hair, and this was very common. It starts with Pliny suggesting that bear's grease is good, and it goes right the way through until actually after the First World War. Bear's grease was still being sold in Britain after the First World War. So it's a very, very long-lived idea and a very, very long-lived trade. Something that really needs some study as well, because it hasn't had rent. So where are we with bears in Britain today? Well, here we've got Paddington from Paddington Station. Here in the centre we've got the Thirsty Bear, a pub in Southwark, and I do wonder how many people having a pint in that pub know that the name relates back to the bears that used to fight there in the bear baiting arenas. Not that many, I would guess. And finally we've also got a teddy bear. So this individual is a bear in the form of Ariel the mermaid from Disney's Little Mermaid. And, you know, if we look at these are so far from that large carnivore that we started with, the one that we lived alongside for thousands of years, and now we have taken bears and we've made them something really very human-like, and we've anthropomorphised them enormously. And that's where we are with bears today. And that's the end of my talk, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.